Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to episode 20 of the Daily Raps here at Bray Park. I've got a special guest with me, Mark here. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Barry.
And and you may recall we did the story bridge. You may have seen him on episode 17 when we walked across the bridge. So welcome, Mark, to my second show with you. Okay, so the news is just getting better every day. Like you may recall, I got a call from the NDIS the other the other day about my news about moving back to New South Wales. Well, there is a plan in place. Here's Mark now for his opening sequence on this.
Well, good news for Barry. Very keen to move back to New South Wales, and as with all things that require a lot of people involved, not an easy task. But the official words come through that the move is absolutely on, and just an assessment away, and then the time frame should be perfect. Exactly what you wanted.
And like I've said before on many of the shows I've brought to you here at Bray Park, well, what's the point of trying on? What's the point of trying to put the shoe on the other foot if it doesn't fit? Here's Mark now.
So Barry's very excited about the move. Uh, the move to Bray Park was an adventure, and was hopefully going to see Barry, in a new place with new surroundings, new adventures all the time. It hasn't worked out to be exactly what was going to be best for Barry, so very keen to move back to New South Wales. And whilst there seemed early impediments, it's now all been ticked off, and the exciting part, which is the countdown, commences.
Today, so it is the 10th of June now, so 8 more weeks of this format to go. And like I've said, viewers and Queensland viewers alike, sorry I cannot continue the program, but let's not worry. We've still got plenty more programs to come with you. We're going to be planning something exciting on Monday with Mark here. And if you like the story Bridge outing, look up on that now and watch that. That was my first program with him on Monday. And we had a lovely guy called Harry take us. Here he is.
Harry's not going to be taking us to the next one, but I'm looking forward to next Monday, because I don't know if I told you, but when we go out there, you'll be fishing. So we'll be sitting out on the pier at Scarborough.
Yibbida yibbida.
Hey,
Yibbida yibbida.
yibbity yibbida.
Remember Rex Hunt?
I do remember Rex Hunt.
Well, let's hope it's good weather for that. So, I'd like to talk about now on the show how the move to Bray Park happened. Well, I put it on my goals in Sydney, okay, to move up here, and I did a couple of farewell videos, okay, and I was really excited to be here on the first leg of this adventure. I thought the shoe was gonna fit, but no, it felt like I had a blister on the foot. Here's Mark now.
Well, hopefully the blisters heal rather than just going to have a band-aid over it. So, I hope that the move back to Sydney gives you all the things that you want out of life and keeps you interested and happy.
Yeah, and like, believe you and me, ladies and gentlemen out there, it was not a very good start right from the beginning. So let me take you back to where all the drama happened. Well, I left Sydney to go. I went to Mascot Airport in Sydney, and I got on the plane, and they were still trying to get my wheelchair onto the plane, and I had to make an informed decision. Do I stay on the plane or get off? So I had to say, well, I'm going to stay on because I didn't want to hold the plane up anymore. But when we were in the sky and en route, and route, if that's the correct way of putting it, okay, I began to feel some pain in the chest. So luckily there was a doctor on board to help me, and I wasn't getting any better. So I had to get somebody to call 000, or then organize that. And prior to the plane landing in Brisbane. So when we arrived in Brisbane, okay, paramedics came on board, the fireys came on board, they assessed me, and then I was wheeled away off the plane. But where did I go? Not straight here to Prince Charles Hospital. And I spent the first 4 days, or well, 4.5 days there. I had an infection, but I won't go too much into detail on that. However, on the first that night of Bray Park, there were 2 more people here, so quite good there. But a month later, my homesickness set in. Here's Mark now.
Yes, you were telling me that you were very excited about coming up here, but you miss your friends and your family down in Sydney, and that's where you've always been. It's very hard to lose all those connections and start completely fresh. So getting homesick, perfectly expected and normal.
Yeah, but on the 20th of May, which was a Friday, almost a month to the date, okay, I had a very stressful phone call, okay, and NDIS wouldn't fund the money for me to go back. So unfortunately, I had a really huge meltdown there. And boy, was I angry that day. Here's Mark.
Yes, I have to admire your restraint. Whilst you were angry and you say you were having a meltdown, it was not as bad as what I call a meltdown. You certainly, well, by my reckoning, controlled yourself rather well.
Yeah, so that was on the 20th of May. And then on the 6th of May, I had put in my goals that New South Wales was not, well, Queensland was not the place for me because I was not fitting in. The shoe wasn't fitting on the right, on the foot. Okay, so you know what it's like when you buy a new pair of shoes and they're either too tight or too loose, whatever. Here's Mark.
I actually think, Barry, it's more that you've got blue blood.
Blue blood.
Yes. You just can't get the New South Welshman out of you.
No. Another thing we'd like to focus on today is thinking positive. Now, while you're worried and you're stressed, okay, why don't you drink some of this? Okay, so we all get stressed in our lives, but if you worry and stress all the time, it's not good, and it can upset the, you know what, I don't want to mention that on today's show. So I did a video in April about how to manage stress and and how and how to manage it. So Mark, what do you do when you're having a meltdown and stress?
I try to take a good hard look at the reaction that I'm having to whatever's upsetting me and why I've chosen to let that upset me, because how I react to anything is entirely up to me. And whilst I recognise that that's always true, sometimes managing your own state can be extremely difficult.
Okay, but remember, don't take your anger out on someone else. Here's Mark.
Absolutely. Stress is one of those hidden things that makes us behave quite differently to what we normally would, and tends to make us be more internally focused than externally focused, and we forget about the people around us who 99% of the time do not deserve the treatment that they get when we're in a bad mood.
So, okay, here's an example. Okay, if you receive some bad news, say from the NDIS, about being knocked back, about a goal that you wanted to pursue, don't just barge in and say, oh, it's all your fault, when really it isn't the person's fault. Here's Mark now.
Yes, working within systems can be extremely frustrating, but there is generally a way around it. It just requires a bit of time and focus and conversation with the people that you're dealing with to try and achieve the outcomes that you want.
So, if you've received some bad news like I did on the 20th of last month, okay, don't. And Mark and I repeat, don't ever turn the volume up on your voice, because it's like turning up the radio full blast and then go rah 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 rah, because it's not the way to handle it. Here's Mark.
Yeah, sometimes it's very hard to hear a message coming at you at a particularly loud volume. So as Barry says, try and tone everything down and think carefully about the words that you choose and the message that you want to give.
But if you're still upset about it, okay, email your site manager, organize a meeting with them. Here's Mark.
So Barry has got a perfect example of a negative response that upset him, and then just chose to tone down, write some emails, open channels of communication, and within a relatively short time, everything's turned around, it's approved, and so Barry can now be extremely happy with the result. But it was only because he chose to go down a nicely controlled path in dealing with people, and those people have come through, and now he's got what he ultimately asked for.
Because as the saying goes, guys, if you don't ask, you don't get. Here's Mark now.
That's very true, Barry. If you don't ask, if people don't know what you want, you're definitely not going to get it. Communication is always the key to achieving your own personal goals, and making sure that the people around you understand are on board with what you're doing and what you want to get out of life.
And don't assume that people can read your mind. Here's Mark.
Yes, unfortunately, it's not one of my personal skills, and I've always been an annoying questioner, simply to get the information that I need to know what's going on.
So, we will continue this afternoon on the second part of the show today. But here's another quote. Yeah. Good things come to those who are respectful. Here's Mark.
Yes, and I suppose part of that respect is, taking the time, in other words, waiting for those around you to understand what the message is that you're trying to convey.
Okay, because going back to getting angry, okay, please, as we conclude the first part of our show today for this Friday, don't just sit in your room with the door shut and slam the door and go bang with the door and ignore people because they may be thinking, oh, does this person need help? Are they okay? Here's Mark.
It's a difficult circumstance when people do shut themselves off. I don't know if they realise that their anger actually drives people away and makes it harder for them to achieve the outcomes that they want. And Barry is quite correct in saying, you've got to leave the channels of communication open. So the symbolic shutting of the door serves no purpose at all.
Because, say if I was in here now and I was angry and I shut the door. Now, is that a way of communicating with someone? Of course it is not. Because how will people know how to calm me down? What can they do to resolve my problem? What can they do to relieve my anger? Here's Mark.
And I think your point is very valid, Barry, in that the people around you in your immediate environment are rarely the people that are the cause of the issue. So where in Barry's case in particular it was a system caused issue, it's just a matter of working through it. So if he'd shut himself off, he would still be sitting here angry about not being able to move back to New South Wales, rather than being very excited about having sorted it out and achieving his goal.
So after the break, we're going to talk more about this and having good communication skills for people too. Because it is very important. Because over the next 8 weeks here, we'll be recapping all of this, okay, and all of this, and before we do go to the break, okay, it is an exciting time for me to be moving back, because a lot of people have written to me in their emails and said they miss me and all of that. And I think from my point of view, I was thinking, okay, what can I do to overcome their sadness? Well, I think I have the answer for you now, okay, because it's going to be good news for them. Here's Mark now.
I think it's more good news for you, Barry.
It is, but
I think you're very excited about being able to go back and catch up with old friends, and I think maybe a more comfortable environment because you know it so well.
Yeah. So we will be back after the lunch break, and this program today is proudly brought to you in part with Arnott's Salada, snack size or bite size. But you can put anything you like on your salads, like your Vegemite, your ham, your hummus, anything you like. So we'll be back after the lunch break. And remember, guys, keep up your fluids, okay? So we'll be back with you after the lunch break. It's coming up to nearly 12 midday here, Friday, the end of Friday morning. Thanks for joining Mark and I. We'll come back with the second part of Friday's show after the lunch break. But before we go to the lunch break, Mark and I were waiting for a taxi on Monday to take us to Marumba Downs. Here he is to tell you about it.
Well, we waited for the taxi. The taxi didn't come. So in the end, as luck would have it, he has a a wheelchair accessible vehicle, and Tina drove us to the shopping centre at Marumba Downs, and oddly enough, once we'd finished at Marumba Downs and had to call a taxi again, that was at least it was more than an hour that we had to wait for one to turn up. So the taxis have been very disappointing of late.
And always ask the driver how much it is on the meter. Here's Mark.
Well, these days, I always check the display that's on the roof of the taxi so that I know. And the other option, of course, is use the taxi app, and you can prepay at a fixed price, and it does tend to work out to be cheaper than the metered price most of the time.
Because it was $29 by the time we got back here. But it was $14.50.
Yes. Well, your concession card does make it a bit of a cheap trip in a taxi.
Yeah, so it's 12 o'clock now. Time for a break, and we'll come back to you with the second part of our show. This is episode 20 now. Great to be with you here at Braid Park on this beautiful Friday, and we will see you after the lunch break. Look forward to that. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the second part of our show now. I'm Barry Fear with you. And Mark. Thanks for joining us here.
Pleasure.
Okay. On the second part of our show today, we'd like to go over about having a positive mental attitude if you've received some bad news. Okay, we all receive bad news, but should we go on and on about it? No. Here's Mark now for his opening sequence on the second part of our show today.
I would say that from the point of view of coping, that anger is very much a wasted emotion and does not achieve outcomes. So you can choose to be angry, or you can choose to try and just go about fixing whatever it is that's upset you.
Or, and like we said before, you can either come in here and go whack with the door and ignore people, but there are serious consequences with that. Because people may be thinking, oh, what have I done? What have I said? Here's Mark now.
Yes, and in the context of dealing with people, you often find that your behaviour is mirrored. So if you get angry and shut the door, you'll often find that that's what you get in response to that. So when you think about what am I doing that's actually creating the problem, a lot of times it is about showing an emotion that people then mirror, and so you get anger back.
People may think, oh yeah, something is wrong with this person. What have they done? Because say for example, if I was angry with Mark here, he would think, oh, what have I done? Here he is.
I haven't seen it yet, but hopefully I don't manage to make Barry too angry before he speaks up and tells me whatever it is that I'm doing that is not the way he wants it done, or in a manner that he finds appropriate. So again, it all comes down to communication.
Okay. And like I said in the first part of our show today, please do not, and we repeat, do not take your anger out on, on someone else, because it is not only rude, but disrespectful and off-putting. Here's Mark now.
And generally, along with those negative connotations, it's just counterproductive. So it makes it harder for you to achieve results and outcomes that you are looking for if people are not inclined to work with you because you've either been rude or angry with them, and not their place to wear somebody else's anger.
Because, okay, you may think, okay, I've received some bad news. And then you go, all of a sudden, bang! And then you explode like a firework. But there are ways, guys, of dealing with anger, because don't just come in here, example, and take your anger out on someone else because they've tried to explain something to you, or don't just say, I don't want to know about it, or I'm done, etc. Here's Mark now.
Yes, it's more important to try and work with people to help resolve situations rather than work against people. So, as Barry said, if you come in punchy or super aggressive, the chances are nobody will want to deal with you at all. And it certainly makes it much harder, because you do tend to find that people that are angry, they also lose their listening skills. So while people are trying to explain a situation or what might help to resolve it, it can often be lost in the sea of red that you're seeing at the time.
Okay, because often, okay, people might say, okay, I've tried to help you resolve the problem and you are just talking over the top of it. Here's an example. If you are angry and you find yourself in a very sticky situation, okay, just take a moment and calm down. Here's Mark.
Yes, it's better to step back, take a few deep breaths, walk around the block if it's going to take that long, but certainly before you deal with other people, it's best to have that calming down period so that you can't be perceived as being aggressive, because anger is a very difficult emotion to hide, and people can tell when you're angry. So, and as I said before, it does make people disinclined to want to engage with you in the first place.
Because, and
Excuse me, Barry.
we will take a break. Welcome back. As we were saying before, okay, about anger and all of that, Okay, there is absolutely, I'm just pointing. There are ways of dealing with anger, okay? But don't go around blaming people because you've had bad news. Here's Mark now.
Yes, it's something that as people, we all need to understand that our bad news is not everybody else's concern. There are people that will try and help with situations that improve your mood, but effectively, getting angry is, well, it's almost a choice. There are certain things that you know will push your buttons, but you can manage your reaction to whatever it is that pushes your buttons. So, again, it comes down to recognizing within yourself what upsets you and what you can do to manage your reaction.
Because you can either work around it two ways. Either go around your flat or unit sulking all day and night and expect people to put up with it. No, they won't. Because as Mark said, okay, people push the stop button like on a tape player and stop the angry tape. Here's Mark.
Yes, it's often one of the things that leads to escalating anger is that other people don't want to engage in your reactions. So they step away, and it does tend to make certain situations worse. So again, it's just important to remember, have a look at your reaction to whatever it is that's making you angry, and what can you do to manage that better.
Well, I have a couple suggestions now before we move off. One, write down what has made you angry. Two, say to the person, I'm sorry, but I need 30 minutes to calm down. Three, when you are ready to be more polite and friendly to people, they will acknowledge you. And four, if you're still in that sort of mood, then no one will want to listen to the angry tape. And five, don't just sit around crying all night. You can either do two things. You can either grin and bear it and accept the fact that there is nothing you can do, or the choice is yours. Here's Mark.
I think Barry's touched on a very good point, which is, you can choose how you want to react. If you want to remain angry, and often that's the main reason for people staying angry is because they want to, you just have to recognise that it's not other people who are in that same state, and that it is going to create negative reactions overall.
And we will take a welcome back. Now moving off the anger. Now, you probably heard by now that I am not going to be here for very much longer. Here's Mark now.
Yeah, so Barry's been looking to move back to Sydney for a while, and there were a few impediments along the way, a couple of roadblocks that slowed things down, tested your anger, and because, in essence, of the way that you reacted, you've managed to sort it out very quickly. So you've got the result that you wanted and everybody's happy. So a good example of managing your anger and being able to achieve the outcomes that you want.
So, if you don't ask or don't tell people what you want or the goals that you want to achieve, well, you won't get his mark now.
Yeah, so Barry's been very clear about what he wants to do, how he wants to go about it, and how much time, effort, money, all the variables he's thought through and has a solid plan which he has written down succinctly, and now that plan has been enacted so that he's going to end up with exactly what he wants.
So, like, if you don't ask, you don't get his mark now.
So Barry's been telling me that if you don't ask, you don't get, and it's absolutely true. If you don't communicate what you want, how is anybody else going to know what you want? So absolutely, you have to ask. Hoping that by some miracle people can read your mind will not make it happen.
Because if you assume, guys, that people are going to read your mind, well, I'm sorry, Mark and I will not believe in that or tolerate that. If you're not happy with something, please, for goodness sake, speak up or it won't happen. Here's Mark.
And that's pretty much true of everything in life, not just the things that make you angry, the things that make you happy as well. If people don't know what it is that you want to get out of the world, then it's very difficult for them to play along with what your plan is.
So, don't just sit there and assume that someone's going to read your mind when they're not, because they are not mind readers. Here's Mark.
Yes, a lot of people think they are mind readers. It often leads to miscommunication and leaves everybody dissatisfied. So it comes back to what we were talking about right at the start. Clear communication will end up getting you what you want.
So, the last thing we'd like to talk about today is my news. Now, I'm going back to Sydney because I feel that this is not the right place for me, and I have enjoyed Bray Park, but guys, the Bray Park story will end very soon. Here's Mark.
Yeah, I'm very happy for Barry that he's going back to Sydney, which is exactly what he wants, and has had it all organised and has the time frames that he was looking for, and ultimately exactly what he wanted is what he's going to get out of it, even though the initial reaction to your request was a hard no, wasn't it?
A very hard no. And that's because I was knocked back by NDIS. But after speaking to them on Tuesday, okay, the things turned around. Here's Mark.
A good example of both Barry's ability to manage his state. so that even though he was upset, he knew that being angry and lashing out wasn't going to help him achieve any change. So he very sensibly wrote well-controlled emails and got his point across, and after that things fell into place relatively quickly.
And which brings us on nicely to I managed to conclude this episode. Okay, have your questions ready.
I was going to say, and we probably should put a rider on this episode. Neither of us are psychologists or psychiatrists, and our burblings are from life experience.
That's a good one. Now on to the phone manners, guys. Please have fun, good phone manners. Don't threaten the people on the phone. Have the person's phone number and the questions you wish to ask. Here's Mark now.
That's very good advice, Barry. Make sure you have very clear questions that you know you want to ask before you dial.
Because don't just dial the person's number and threaten them. Here's Mark now.
It's probably an extension, but you probably should never do anything angry as a reaction. It rarely ends well and often leads to significant regret. So take Barry's advice and plan what you want and then execute the plan, and hopefully people are engaged with you in a way that satisfies you and doesn't offend them.
So on the subject, if you're going back over what we've said, if you're gonna be angry and stupid, well then the choice is yours. Here's Mark now.
Yeah, well, we hope that you don't choose anger and that you do choose to take a few deep breaths, think about why you're angry and what you need change to fix that.
And the number that I'd like to close the show with this afternoon, and episode 20 of the show is 000. Please do not ring that number unless you've got a time critical emergency. 000 is only to be used in an emergency, not for stupid prank calls like pizza deliveries. Here's Mark now with his closing message on this.
Absolutely. 000 is emergency only, and anyone that rings without an emergency is both blocking the lines for someone that may have one and taking up valuable time for operators. So please try and avoid 000 where you can. Most police have direct line numbers which you can find for different stations, and they'll be able to deal with non-emergency reporting. And emergencies are obviously those where you feel immediately threatened or you're in trouble in some way that requires somebody else's intervention.
But don't bring an ambulance just to get a lift to a shopping centre or ask them to take you home. Get a taxi like we're gonna do in just a few minutes.
Right now, in fact.
Right now. So thank you for your company today on the on the show, and we'll see you on Monday for another jam-packed episode. So, from Mark now and myself, have a good weekend. Here he is for his farewell and thank you.
Thank you for listening, and I look forward to catching up with you on Monday. Hopefully, Barry's going to be reeling in some fish, so we'll see.
And our program today is proudly sponsored by 1-3 Cats. We'll get you there. 1-3 Cats will get you there.
Thank you.
And thank you, and have a lovely weekend. Bye-bye now.
Bye.